The Taizé style of worship is rooted in the contemplative tradition. The word contemplation is something that I like to unpack from time to time to really get down into what this ancient way of being together means. It's an English word, but the root is Latin, and it's three parts. The first part of the word contemplation is con, and it means with. Con means with. The second part of the word contemplation is templa, and apparently back in the Roman times there was an idea of a stacked heaven. There were 7 layers to the heaven, and the templa was the part of heaven where God resided. So contempla means being with God in the place where God resides. And then contemplation, of course, ends with T-I-O-N. And whenever we see that suffix on a word, it always means the same thing. It means in an ongoing way. So reconciliation is the work of reconciling in an ongoing way. So contemplation is this ancient invitation passed down for millennia that invites us to be with God in the place where God resides in an ongoing way. Whenever I teach the Enneagram, which is an ancient practice of understanding self and others, understanding our connection to God, passed down through the years, I like to see it as a contemplative practice. Whenever I teach the Enneagram, I think about that, this invitation to be with God in an ongoing way, because one of the things the Enneagram does for us is points out our other ongoing states. So we see it as a personality typing system where you learn what your lens is, you learn about your abiding states, and we all have abiding states. Maybe our abiding states are worry, or indignation, or fear, or overly optimistic. But the invitation of the contemplative pathway is to recognize the abiding state of this invitation to be with God. And so we practice the contemplative way. We practice prayer, meditation. We practice silence. We practice scripture study. We practice self-reflection and awareness and examine. And the Taizé style of worship is this contemplative pathway. And it began, interestingly, in a small town in France as one of the first Protestant monastic communities, and it began in the 1940s as a reaction to the world that formed after World War II. We talked in Sunday school a little bit about organizations that formed in reaction to the war, First World War. Here's an invitation to study a community that came together after World War II in a way that lifted up this invitation to be with God. From its beginning, the mission of this community was one of reconciliation among the divisions of the nation, and the denominations in particular. And so Brother Roger, as he began this community, he and the rest of the community fashioned the worship service so that everyone could participate. They were healing divisions. They were moving away from exclusions, and that meant that their worship was based on simple things. Simple things like chanting that we've participated in today. These were repeated over and over so that people who were coming from different backgrounds, who had different languages so that they could all pick up this invitation to sing. There was nothing fancy about it. It was offered in a way that all could participate and turn their hearts and their souls to God, even with the differences that they brought to that community. And then also, interestingly, the Bible was shared around short, foundational stories about Jesus. They didn't move through the lectionary. They didn't showcase their seminary degrees and the knowledge that they had of the context or social or historical criticism. They told the stories of Jesus over and over and over again so that people might ruminate, chew, sit with the divine and holy word. And finally, Taizé worship includes silence. For Brother Roger, silence was the form of prayer that brought him closest to God. Our silence today was relatively short. Brother Roger started his silence with 7 to 12 minutes. He would kind of feel it out, see how the community was doing, and then nod to the musicians. But for Brother Roger, silence was a particular type of prayer, a place where we open our hearts to God. By stilling our minds and our thoughts in prayer, Brother Roger said, silence is everything. And so, friends, we continue our